The tournament is only hours away. Do you have enough betting knowledge in your bag to cash tickets on Sunday? Join our golf betting experts as they expose value for bettors by analyzing the course, the field, and the matchups. Improve your handicapping with Longshots. Ladies and gentlemen, now on the tee, Brady Kannon, Matt Humans, and Wes Reynolds.
Welcome to Longshots on VSiN, SiriusXM, Channel 204, VSiN.com, the VSiN app, and Fubo TV. Longshots is brought to you by Westgate Las Vegas Resort and Casino. I'm Brady Kannon along with Wes Reynolds. Matt Humans is off today. He is buried with college basketball, but we will have his plays for you in our final segment called Match Plays. And Wes, I want to talk about last week's event, the Players Championship, the first really big event on the tour schedule of 2019, and it did not disappoint. An incredible field. Rory Mcilroy gets the victory, his sixth straight top six finish, and this one resulted in a W.
Yeah, the discussion going into the week was when Rory Mcilroy is going to be able to close the deal in one of these, and he finally did. You had a lot of guys in contention, though. Jon Rahm in contention. Dustin Johnson had his best ever finish at Sawgrass, which was a fifth place. And DJ, having won 20 events on the tour, has only won one time in the state of Florida. That's kind of been maybe the one glaring, I guess, weakness, if you want to say the number one player in the world has a weakness in terms of results, is that he's won one time in the state of Florida, and that was at Doral a few years ago for a WGC event. But you had a lot of big names up there, and then you had some resurgent guys, the Brandt Snedekers, obviously Jim Furyk was right there, and Jim Furyk, interestingly enough, as we're kind of approaching the Masters here, Brady, April 1st is the cutoff to be, if you're not already in the Masters via the various exemptions, majors, previous tour winners for the last calendar year, what have you, you have to be in the top 50 in the official world golf rankings to get a Masters invitation. And Jim Furyk now is up to 57. So, he's close. He's kind of actually in that match play field, because next week at the Dell Match Play in Austin, you have the top 64, and then there's probably going to be a few that skip the week and drop out. I mean, because if you go the distance there, you're going to be playing 7 rounds in a very short amount of time. So, some of the guys maybe just outside the 64 will get in, but Furyk is one of those guys that's trying to fight his way into the Masters.
Well, you've got basically 2 more weeks. You've got this week on tour and then the match play, as you mentioned, and then that'll be that April 1st deadline when you have to be ranked top 50 in the world, correct?
Yes.
Okay, so Jim Furyk definitely on the cusp right there, and when we get into our major implications segment talking about the Masters, we'll go over a few more other guys that are on the bubble. Maybe guys, it's kind of like a bubble team in college basketball, trying to qualify for that year's first major could be added motivation for them. And you mentioned Jim Furyk. Boy, it was an incredible leaderboard at the Players Championship on Sunday, and really kind of an outlier was Furyk. And we mentioned him here on the show. I had him at 125 to 1, and boy, was I rooting hard for him. I have to pat myself on the back with the handicap. There was the correlation with the Pete Dye course at Harbortown you spoke about. Furyk has had great success there. His stats are off the charts this year. He's putting well. He's scrambling well. He's always been a very accurate driver of the golf ball, and he's had good finishes in the past here at Sawgrass, and 125 to 1 shot almost got there. But I want to ask you about Jon Rahm too. He really fell apart on Sunday with a 76, and Rahm is certainly a bomber, as is Dustin Johnson. Both of these guys had really good Players Championships. You mentioned Johnson finishing 5th, the best ever in his career. I think with the lack of rough this year and the overseeded rough, the players were able to play out of it much easier, and it really more so than I think we've ever seen before at Sawgrass. It catered more so to the bombers this year.
Yeah, absolutely. And you mentioning Rahm with this faltering and his disagreement with his caddy, Jon Rahm is a guy that we know has the goods and has the talent to win and win quite frequently. And but he has been in some big moments, and that's one of the reasons I've always been hesitant, and I've talked about being hesitant to back him in a major until he really gets close to the cusp of one and maybe fails, because that's what you've seen with a lot of these, even these top guys. They get close, and they kind of have to stub their toe and fail before they ultimately succeed. We saw that a couple times with Dustin Johnson, especially at Chambers Bay, where he should have won the tournament, and he 3-putts from 12 feet. and Jordan Spieth ends up winning that U.S. Open. So, Rahm is a guy, and he's very temperamental. He's kind of a hothead. He's very emotional, and he's still a really young guy, and he's still maturing. So, maybe don't give up on him down the line just yet. He's a guy you definitely want to buy long term, but you might want to hold him a little bit if you have a stock in Jon Rahm long term. Kind of hold him until maybe he produces in a major and proves that he can do it.
I thought it was pretty interesting. He was trading at the Westgate at 18-1 to win the Masters, and obviously he had a good Players Championship, just had the poor round on Sunday, had 3 prior rounds all in the 60s, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and his odds came down at the Westgate, now 16-1 to win the Masters.
Yeah, I think people obviously see the talent there. And, people more often than not, it's such a delicate balance, Brady, when you're doing this. Do you go with the recent form or do you go with the course form? And then you kind of add the statistics in, all the metrics that we'll talk about with our guest, Patrick Mayo, later in the show, in terms of strokes gained tee to green, strokes gained approach, strokes gained putting, whatever metrics you look at. And, commingling that with the recent form and the course form. But I think, maybe more casual bettors that maybe just bet the majors like the Masters or the really big tournaments really, I think, are acclimated more towards going to recent form more than anything else.
Yeah, it's kind of like, the same theory in football, the recency factor, what you've seen last week or what have you. And it's not a bad handicap in golf. Hot players typically do well week in and week out, but you've got to look at course form and so many different other things. But let's take a look at this week on the tour, and that is the Valspar Championship, the final leg of the Florida Swing. It is the Copperhead course at Innisbrook in Palm Harbor, Florida. One of the more difficult golf courses on tour. It's similar to the Honda Classic in the sense that it's a difficult course. You've got to be relatively accurate off the tee, similar to maybe the Genesis Open where you've got to work the ball in both directions. Very atypical of a Florida course is it's tree-lined. We don't see a lot of tree-lined fairways in Florida. It definitely has its fair share of sand traps. It's got a few water hazards as well, but it's not going to be anything like we've seen recently in Florida with the palm trees and water all over the place. It really is a little bit different test of golf, and we've got 14 of the top 30 players in the world here. Tiger's not here this week, but there are certainly some big names in the field, and it ought to be another good tournament on tour, Wes, with so far what's been an incredible year with the new schedule.
Yeah, and another thing that I think is added to this course, maybe more so than some other Florida stops, is that it's in Palm Harbor, about 40 minutes northwest of Tampa, Florida. And it's relatively close to the ocean, so some of the scores are a little bit compressed and pushed down a little bit because more so than others, it's exposed to wind. And, being that it's kind of in that central Florida region, usually it's not, but it's a little more exposed to wind. And you look at some of the previous winners at this event. Paul Casey was 10 under. Adam Hadwin, kind of an anomaly, 14 under. But you've seen a lot of 7 unders, anywhere from 7 to 10 under. And, I mean, even back in 2008, you saw as low as 4 under when Sean O'Hare won. So this isn't really an event where you're going to see guys shoot, I don't think, 15, 16, 17 under. I mean, even par usually makes the cut here, which is 142, 71, 71 both days. So, you're going to see, especially if you're playing like fantasy lineups, if your guys at even par are kind of around that mark, he can still make the cut and maybe make up some ground on the weekend if you're like a DraftKings daily fantasy type player. So definitely don't fret about that.
Well, looking at the forecast, it looks like Thursday and Friday will have winds in the neighborhood of 10 to 13 miles an hour, which is a decent wind. Probably not going to kill anybody, but it will definitely affect some golf shots. And then it looks like the weekend is going to calm down even more so. So I don't know if the wind is going to be a tremendous factor this week, but it will play a part. I also want to talk about the correlation with U.S. Open winners. This course is very much, even Stuart Sink went out and said, they should hold a U.S. Open here. It is all about a traditional U.S. Open type setup where you've got some rough, you have to be accurate off the tee, you have to work your ball in both directions, and we've seen U.S. Open winners have success here. Jordan Spieth, Jim Furyk, Luke Donald, guys, that plotter, accurate type player that has a great short game. We've seen them have success here at the Copperhead course. Would you see that happening again this year?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think ball striking is always at a premium, but here especially on the par threes, this course actually has 5 par threes. I mean, your usual typical par 72 layout is going to have 2 par threes on the front and back 9, but this has 5, and they're different types of lengths. There's some longer par threes. Those are the most difficult holes on the course. Par 5s are pretty easy. So
yeah,
I mean,
the par 5s have been the easiest holes on the course, I think, year in and year out.
Yeah, absolutely. So I mean, you're looking, I think, greens and regulation, how guys score on the par 3. If you get into maybe some of the putting stats, maybe looking at how guys putt on Bermuda. They were on bent last week, so this week they're back on the usual Bermuda. So, I mean, length off the tee is a lot more irrelevant. I mean, looking at the previous winners, you don't have a ton of bombers here. You've had a couple, but I mean, Paul Casey, Charles Schwartzel, Jordan Spieth.
Gary Woodland was really an outlier when he won because definitely back in that time of his career, he was absolutely a bomber and not much of anything else. But I agree with you. I think it is going to come – I think the tournament is going to be decided from, 150, 200 yards in. It's going to be strokes gained approach, strokes gained around the green. And I really do think putting is going to be big this week. I think when you're doing your handicap this week, you need to look at guys that are efficient off the tee, but really flourish in the short game area. And one of those guys I'm looking at, 2 guys that I'm looking at this week, Wes, that are good in that regard are Ryan Moore and Webb Simpson. And Simpson had an 8th place finish here last year. He's had a couple of slips in other years, but also had some top 10 finishes earlier here as well. Finished 16th last week at the Players in his title defense. I think he really fits the mold for this golf course.
Yeah, I would agree, and he was certainly somebody I looked at. I didn't ultimately play, but a guy that really stood out to me this week actually is Brandt Snedeker. Now, he's been very popular and kind of steamed a little bit, but he's still at 40-1 and still good value. And I think one of the things about Brandt Snedeker you want to notice is that he is back with his original and his old swing coach, Todd Anderson, who's the director of instruction at the PGA Tour Performance Center right at TPC Sawgrass, where the tour was last week for the Players. And coincidentally enough, Brandt Snedeker had his best all-time finish at the Players with 5th, and that was largely due to the fact that he was 1st in greens and regulation, 9th strokes gained approach, 10th in strokes gained around the green, and 6th tee to green. And he's back with Todd Anderson. He was, of course, with Butch Harmon. And, Butch Harmon's worked with a lot of great players, and Butch is one of the best in the business, but he might not be for everybody. And, Brandt Snedeker, I think, went back to a guy that he was very comfortable with. Around the greens. We know Brandt Snedeker can putt. He's one of the best guys out there, and he's got 3 wins on this surface, so...
That's what I was going to say. I mean, if his ball striking is anything close to what it was last week, leading the field in greens and regulation at the Players, like you said, we know he can putt. 11th on tour in strokes gained putting. And also, I like this stat this week. Brandt Snedeker is number 6 on tour in putts inside of 10 feet. I think putts inside of 10 feet on these small greens will be a key statistic to look at this week.
Absolutely. And a lot of those, and at a fair amount of those putts inside 10 feet are going to be to save pars. I mean, to really avoid bogeys. And we know that, going under par is going to be at a relative premium this week compared to other courses. So, Snedeker is a guy to look at. Another guy with you were talking about the ball striking and greens and regulation, Kevin Kisner at 50-1. 13th, 16th, 3rd, and 8th, 4 of his last 5 weeks in greens and regulation. And at Harbor Town, which I think will have a little bit of correlation this week, even though the designer history is different. Guy that's always played well there, guys that's played well at Carolina Golf, Quail Hollow, Sedgefield. So, Kisner is a guy I would certainly look at this week that's a little bit down the board.
You make a good point with Sedgefield. That's, of course, the site of the Wyndham Championship, and both Webb Simpson and Brandt Snedeker have had tremendous success there.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think you're just, you're seeing a lot of guys. And then one other one that stood out to me was Sungjae Im at 66-1. You can maybe get him anywhere.
Been a real
70.
hot player, man.
Yeah, absolutely.
Good stats, too.
And Sungjae Im is one of those guys I mentioned, like Furyk, that's kind of just outside those under those Mendoza lines, trying to get into the match play and also the Masters. He's ranked 72 in the world now. Remember, Sungjae Im was the money winner on the Webb.com tour last year. So, this is a guy that doesn't have a lot of PGA Tour events. And
no, this is his first time ever playing the Valspar.
Yeah, and the fact that he's 72 in the world shows he's put some really good finishes together. And, I think somebody middle price like him is going to have a huge sense of urgency, and don't be shocked if he's on the leaderboard on Sunday.
Well, you're all familiar with the Westgate Superbook, and we want to thank the Westgate for being our title sponsor here of Longshots. Westgate Las Vegas Resort and Casino, home to the world-famous Superbook and NFL Super Contest. You've heard us reference this iconic Las Vegas Resort and Casino thousands of times here on VSiN, and now we want you to experience this classic piece of Las Vegas history for yourself. Elvis Presley performed here, Leon Spinks, Muhammad Ali, and Mike Tyson boxed here. Now it's your turn to make history at Westgate Las Vegas Resort and Casino. Located adjacent to the Las Vegas Convention Center, 1 block off of the Strip and across the street from amazing golf at the historic Las Vegas Country Club, Westgate Las Vegas Resort and Casino offers the finest amenities, spacious rooms, world-famous dining options, and legendary performers like nowhere else. In addition to the property's decorated history, fantastic shows, expansive gaming floor, and of course the Superbook, Westgate Las Vegas Resort and Casino guests are given special access to the exclusive private golf club, Las Vegas Country Club, located right out the hotel's back door. Play where Dean Martin teed it up, where both the PGA and LPGA tours have held professional tournaments. The Las Vegas Country Club is like no other course in the desert, with its tree-lined fairways, glistening water features, and park-like setting. Book your stay and play today at Westgate Las Vegas. That's westgatevegas.com, westgatevegas.com, or call 702-732-5631, 702-732-5631, and make your next reservation in Las Vegas quite a super booking. We'll be back here on Long Shots. It's Wes Reynolds and Brady Kannon here on VSiN.
Last week, here's some of what you missed.
Well, it's official. The Super Contest, under the direction of Jay Cornegay over here at the Westgate Superbook, has opened, what is it, Jay, 4 months earlier this year? Why is that, my friend?
4 months earlier than ever before. So, yeah, we started accepting Super Contest entries today, and we just wanted to give those that come in during March Madness, Kentucky Derby, the beginning of baseball season, all those fans that come during this time, the opportunity to join the Super Contest.
Okay. Now, what do we have? Entries last year. What do you expect this year?
Well, last year we had 3,123, with the winner collecting just over 1.4 million. I think that, if we're able to get this technology thing figured out, we know there's a lot of technology out there, but we're wanting the selection process to be through our mobile app. And if we can get that, I'm sure the locals here are really going to warm up to that, and we can approach 4,000 entries.
4,000. Well, VSiN 1 and VSiN 2 are officially in. I've got my Westgate Las Vegas Super Contest t-shirt. Now I just need some winners, my friend.
Well, one of the reasons that we, started the process earlier was to jack up that, prize money for you, Brent. Maybe 1.4 wasn't enough for you. Maybe 1.8 is more attractive. Yeah, okay.
All right. So there we have it. The Super Contest is officially underway, and also the gold. Don't forget that. Winner take all. You've still got the same rules for the gold.
That's right. It is winner take all. It's $5,000 entry fee. Same rules as a Super Contest. 5 games against the spread each and every week of the regular season. And whoever accumulates the most points, the most winners in that contest, winner take all. We had 124 last year, which the winner collected just over 450,000. Maybe we'll get over 500,000 this year.
Okay. And if you're out of state, remember, you come to the Westgate, you enter, but you can use a proxy. That's right. You can send in your picks, and they'll make them for you. The Super Contest. Can't wait.
Welcome back to Long Shots, VSiN's weekly golf betting show. Now, back to your betting caddies, Brady Kannon, Matt Humans, and Wes Reynolds.
Welcome back to Longshots. It is the member guest segment, and the member guest segment is brought to you by Reflection Bay at Lake Las Vegas. It is the crown jewel of the billion-dollar Lake Las Vegas resort and community. It is the first Jack Nicklaus designed resort golf course in the state of Nevada, and it completely lives up to the reputation of the architect. Since opening in 1998, the course has been awarded many different accolades, including America's Top Golf Destinations by Golf Medalist, Top 100 Course by Golf Magazine, America's Top Golf Communities by Travel and Leisure, Best New Upscale Course by Golf Digest, and Best Overall Experience by Vegas Golfer Magazine. Golf packages are available now that include rounds of golf at Reflection Bay and rooms at the Westin Lake Las Vegas, the resort that overlooks the stunning lake and has recently gone through $40 million in renovations. The Westin Lake Las Vegas and Reflection Bay are a perfect pairing for a family vacation, a romantic getaway, or a corporate event. If you haven't been to or played Reflection Bay at Lake Las Vegas, you need to come see what all the excitement is about. For information on tee times and golf packages, visit reflectionbaygolf.com or call 702-736-0505. And we want to get right into it with our guest, a special guest this week, a very well-accomplished fantasy golf player and bettor. It is Patrick Mayo. He is an analyst for DraftKings. He's on the board of governors at Fantasy National Golf Club and also the host of the Pat Mayo Experience. Thanks for coming on the show, Pat.
For having me.
Well, this week we've got the Valspar Championship, and I want to get your thoughts on what went into your handicap this week when you're putting together your fantasy team or making a few bets, looking at head-to-head matchups. What do you look at the Copperhead course as how it suits a particular type of player this week?
Well, my process starts the same way every single week. I go to fantasynational.com. I look at the breakdown of the course. I look at the historic trends. And the one thing that really leapt out to me is, if you've been following the Valspar year after year after year, it's one of the more difficult tracks on the PGA Tour. Like 2 years ago, it was 18th to 51 in terms of difficulty. And that's the easiest it's played in quite some time. So you're looking at a winner like -8, -9, -10. So filtered by the players that generally not necessarily the biggest birdie makers in the world, but guys that don't make a ton of bogeys, guys with good short game. And I want to look back at the historic strokes gained trends, and the big thing that left off the page is that strokes gained off the tee just doesn't matter at this course. So you're going to see very few drivers, so it really mitigates the advantage players like Dustin Johnson or John Rahm or Bubba Watson have for this week. And even the pure accuracy players, you can be in the rough as long as you're not in the middle of the trees, you're fine. You need to be hitting greens in regulations. The strokes gained approach amongst the winners in terms of actual strokes gained metrics was 14 times more relevant to the winner, just the winner, than strokes gained off the tee. Just by, if you're looking at top 5, top 10, top 20, it's around 3 times the power from strokes gained approach to strokes gained off the tee. So you want these guys who are hot with the irons right now.
And Patrick, Wes Reynolds here. With what stood out to you this week, and you mentioned how the driving distance and the strokes gained off the tee also didn't matter. How much do you also look at in terms of putting, in terms of the types of surface? Obviously, this is a Bermuda surface this week, so you've got guys that have fared fairly well on Bermuda that are in this field, guys like Jim Furyk, who's won 4 times, Pat Reed 4 times, Brandt Snedeker, Henrik Stenson. How much does that play into your handicap?
Very little. Putting is pretty useless to look at as a predictor of future results. Putting is the most flip-floppy thing that we see week to week to week. Johnny Vegas just gained almost 7 strokes putting at the Players last week, and he's one of the worst putters on tour. So it's really difficult to put it in. You can use it as a tiebreaker. I think it's interesting to look at some of the names that pop up, whether you're differentiating between Bent, between Bermuda, between Pospaslam or POA. But good putters tend to be, fairly consistent, but just because you're the best putter in the world. Let's just take Jason Day as an example. The way I always like to put it is, if Dustin Johnson steps on the tee, he's going to drive at 330 yards anytime that he wants to, and he's the best driver in the world. Wes Bryant is a terrible driver. He's the worst driver on the PGA Tour, even if he still is on the PGA Tour, but he's going to hit it 270, and he's probably going to hit it into the woods. Jason Day is the best putter on planet Earth, but he could finish dead last that week in terms of putting. So it's very difficult to factor in. I think that looking at something like strokes gained around the green or even strokes gained short game, which merges putting and around the green metrics together as a more advanced stat of scrambling, is probably a better way to look at it.
Patrick, Keegan Bradley is at 30-1 here at the Westgate in Las Vegas this week, and he's been playing very well. And we know Bradley year in and year out, besides the slump he had a few years back, very good from tee to green, always leads the tour in total driving, excellent ball striker, but he really struggles with the short game. And I think the short game is going to be very important this week. We know you're going to have to work the ball in both directions. The fairways are a little bit narrower, not necessarily a bomber's course. How do you see Bradley's chances this week, where he does not fare so well in the short game numbers, but is very good off the tee?
He's actually improved the short game just a little bit here since the beginning of 2019. He's actually gained strokes around the green 6 of his past 8 events. So with Bradley, you're just banking on a hot putter. The last time that he has gained more than 1 stroke putting in an event, he won and he came fourth. Now, it doesn't happen very often because he's pretty putrid once he gets onto the greens, but he's leaving himself like 3-foot putts, 4-foot putts. I kind of like it. Like, the approach was off the charts last week, 8.3 strokes gained at the Players. Everything he said is hit the head right on the hammer. Like, he's been a first-round leader here before. This is the course where the term full Keegan really got coined, where he went from first-round leader to shooting 79 the next day and missing the cut. So just be very wary that there are big blow-ups at this course available to almost anyone in the field, regardless of how good that their opening round is. But at 30-1, I don't see any value on that. Even if you got him up to 40-1, which I've seen in some places, I mean, he's not incredibly different from the guys in the mid-50s, the guys in the 60s. So I feel like he's losing out value. Like at Westgate right now, what's Henrik Stenson?
Stenson at the Westgate is 30-1.
So 30-1, same odds. So you could have Keegan Bradley or you could have Henrik Stenson. Henrik Stenson struggled mightily through the Middle East to begin the year. 3 consecutive miscuts. Came over to Mexico. Was a disaster off the tee. Lost like 4 strokes. But at the API and even last week at the Players, the irons came back to life. He's averaging almost 5 strokes gained per event over the last 2. And now we're going to a course that doesn't really matter off the tee. So his struggles off the tee are going to be a bit mitigated. And he just lost a boatload of strokes putting last week. It was really atypical of Henrik Stenson. He's not a great putter, but he's more of an average putter. So if he can get it back going here, he missed the cut a year ago when he was going through a bit of this struggle. But the 3 years before that, he was 7th, he was 11th, he was 4th at this course. So I would just take the overall talent. Keegan's fine, but Stenson's just a better value at that number.
Okay, Patrick, let's talk about maybe some of the guys that really do stand out or jumped out at you this week when you were doing your early handicap Sunday night, Monday morning. And who do you like this week at the Valspar?
So at this particular course, when you get the harder courses, the shorter courses, which mitigate the driving distance, Harbour Town is a very good example of this as well, that hitting the top of the board is usually the way to go, whether it's in the betting market, whether it's on DraftKings. It really doesn't matter. You can build yourself a nice balanced card with guys down the list, and even if you bet on Dustin Johnson this week and he's 5-1, well, really you have that bet and maybe one more down the card. But if you start with Stenson at 30, then you can start piling guys up. I really like Jason Kokrak. It seems like he's fool's gold, but the stats just don't lie about him. I mean, he's doing everything that Keegan Bradley is doing right now, but substantially better. He's 3 top 10s his past 4 starts, has yet to gain a single half-point putting. He's lost strokes putting each of those 4 events. He's still coming near the top of the leaderboard. He is the best player in the field from the key par 3 range this week. There are 5 of them on the course. 4 of them measure over 200 yards. He is the best guy in the field over the past 24 rounds and so far this season from that range. So I like Kokrak. I got him at 45. Snedeker has been bet to death. He was a better bet Monday than he is now, but I still do like Snedeker coming off the hot week. He is bet down to 30-1 in some spots. He opened at 55. And the other guy is Sung Jae Im. Sung Jae Im, the Korean rookie, only 20 years old. He gains in all 3 facets of tee to green. Off the tee, approach, around the green. And he's a pretty average putter. He put 2 in the drink on 17 to miss the cut of the Players. It happens to the best of us. Paul Casey shot like 10 over, who won at this tournament last year. So I'm not afraid to jump back on Sung Jae. Even with a top 5 bet, maybe split whatever you were going to bet on him to win outright. Maybe make an outright bet, a top 5 bet, a top 10 bet. Allocate your money that way. And Sung Jae should come through at this type of course.
Patrick Mayo is our guest. He's a DraftKings analyst. He is also a board of governors at Fantasy National Golf Club and host of the Pat Mayo Experience, talking Valspar Championship on tap on the PGA PGA Tour this week. And you mentioned Jason Kokrak, Pat, and the stats really jump off the page for Kokrak. The same thing has been true week in and week out, basically the entire season for Lucas Glover. Now, he missed the cut last week at the Players, but the last time he missed a cut, it was at Phoenix, and he rebounded at Pebble Beach with a finish of 7th. Does he rebound this week at Copperhead?
Oh, Lord, no. He is the anti-Jason Kokrak. The results almost mirror each other exactly, and it's really strange. You start to think, Lucas Glover, that guy can't putt, so he must be doing the same thing that he's always done, immaculate ball striking, good around the greens, and he's just missing a few three-footers, and that's what's keeping him out of the winner's circle. Now, it can revert back big time, but you always talk about either positive or negative regression when it comes to putting, because most people end up right around zero, right around the baseline, right around average. And as 7th, 4th, and 10th at Pebble, at Honda, and API, he gains 4 strokes, 4.5 strokes, 5.5 strokes on the green. What happened last week? Well, his putting went to crap. He lost almost 5 strokes again on the green. So if he's not rolling this hot putter, which he's been doing, he's missing cuts. And I am not banking on Lucas Glover to have a good week on the greens.
Okay, Patrick, before we let you go, I got to get your thoughts on the Masters. Obviously, March Madness has kind of taken control of the sports world, but we're only 3 weeks away from going to Amen Corner at Augusta National, and wanted to definitely get your early thoughts on this year's tournament.
So I only have 2 bets in so far, actually. I've been really trying to tread water on this because, Rory's been bet down to death. He's like 7-1 now. The only 2 that I have, and I see Will Kim at 150-1, Ian Poulter at 80-1. I think both of them set up really well for this course, and the numbers are going to be shorter by the time it actually comes around, especially if Poulter has a really good match player, goes to Valero, and has another good showing in Texas. So I really want to wait for the forecast at the Masters before investing a whole lot of money, because we can see that Augusta can play one of 2 ways. If it gets cold and it gets windy, you're looking at a winner around like -4, -5. That's how someone like Danny Willett can win at the Masters. He's not winning when it's going to be -19 and people are running away with it. So if it is in ideal conditions, it really changes the way that I want to approach with the picks that I make and the long shots or even favorites that I tend to back. The big one to watch right now is Speed. Speed's down to 20-1. Opened at 8 in November, down to 20-1. If he has another bad week at the match play, we might be able to get 25-1, maybe 30-1. Who knows if they're not taking any action on him. And I don't even really know what to do with it, but if it gets to 30, it feels like a blind bet for me. But even on the weather side of this with Augusta, even this week at Valspar, something to really note. If you're playing in the first-round leader market or you're playing a DraftKings lineup, I'm just looking at the forecast right now. From 7 a.m. until around noon, they're going to be dealing with no wind, like 5-mile-per-hour wind. At 1 p.m., it switches up and starts getting blustery. 15 miles per hour, 16 miles per hour, 25 miles per hour, gusts up to 30. The early wave tomorrow should have a significant advantage coming out of the gate at Valspar.
Thanks so much, Patrick. Appreciate you coming on the show with us, and enjoy the Valspar Championship, and we hope to talk to you again down the road on Longshots.
All right. Thanks so much for having me on.
Absolutely. That's Patrick Mayo. You can follow him on Twitter at @ThePME, @ThePME. We'll be back with more. It's our Major Implications segment. We'll talk Masters. That is just 3 weeks away. It's Wes Reynolds. I'm Brady Kannon here on Longshots on VSiN.
VSiN last week, here's some of what you missed.
Good start, but I want to throw out a warning. Just because the books are lowering the odds on the Raiders to win the Super Bowl, don't run out and make that bet, okay? This team has a long ways to go. Wait for the season win totals to come out after the upcoming draft, and you can back the Raiders that way if you like the number. Or better yet, find a book that puts up a yes-no prop on teams making the playoffs and back the Raiders that way.
I would say anybody that played at Duke ever, or anybody that's a Duke fan, if you say that the kid for Syracuse should have been thrown in jail last night for what he did against Zion Williamson, you're exactly right, Paul. I want the receipts of you saying for the 4 times, I believe, Grayson Allen tripped players, that was clear as day, much clearer than last night. I want you to say the same exact thing. Like that, Coach K basically was like Bud Selig in the All-Star game. We're going to play him. And then suspended indefinitely, which was 1 game, I believe, for Grayson Allen. when he did it 4 times, blatantly tripped players, and nobody called for his head, and they should have.
Antonio Brown wins big, the Raiders win big, the Steelers get just absolutely fleeced. I have other verbs for it, but I'll go with fleeced. Just for the PG-13 quality of the show. And all it took was a 3rd and a 5th round pick. And he gets a massive new deal. And I guess it paid for him to be as ornery as he wanted to be in the end. And he sabotaged his trade value the whole time. Got a huge raise. Left the Steelers with $21 million in dead money cap hit. Does any of this make sense? And the Steelers portion about the cap hit, again, is the most single interesting thing about this. And by interesting, I mean flabbergasting.
All right, here comes the inbounds pass, football-style throw to midcourt. The shot is up. If it's good, he hit the backboard and missed it. Woo!
Well, the under's safe.
All right, you win the under. Hoops, you can't win them all.
No.
And Kelly Bidlin.
Way too close.
Why did you leave?
Way too close. I don't know. I just darted, man. That was way too good of a look. That was way too good of a look.
This just goes to show you that people are just not themselves when they have money on a basketball game.
Absolutely not. Well,
You
when it's your team.
took
And
off
when it's your
ran.
team.
Welcome back to Longshots, VSiN's weekly golf betting show. Now, back to your betting caddies, Brady Kannon, Matt Humans, and Wes Reynolds.
Welcome back to Long Shots on VSiN, VSiN.com, the VSiN app, Fubo TV, and of course, Sirius XM Channel 204. It is our major implications segment. And of course, the next major on the board is the Masters. And this segment is brought to you by a master of a course. That is Bali High. A course that rates the highest in each factor is Bali High Golf Club, a tropical golf course paradise located right on the Las Vegas Strip and in the shadows of some of the most famous hotels in the world. At Bali High, designed by award-winning architects Brian Schmidt and Lee Curley, you will find hundreds of mature palm trees, lagoon-like water features, beautiful bunkering, and a stunning clubhouse home to Sealy Restaurant and an indoor-outdoor patio experience and event space. The course offers Bluetooth technology, caddies upon request, Jell-O shots, model-like beverage cart staff, VIP service from curb to course and back again, high-quality food and beverage, and a par 3 challenge where you can double your money in one swing. The stunning Bali High Golf Club, located in the heart of the Las Vegas Strip, is a golf jackpot, and there are many reasons why. Play today. To learn more about Bali High and the experience, reserve your tee time today by calling 702-450-8000 or visit BaliHighGolfClub.com. That's BAIHAI golfclub.com. And Wes, we turn our attention indeed to Augusta National. The Masters will take place in 3 weeks. And speaking with our guest in the last segment, Patrick Mayo, he brought up a couple of guys that piqued my interest. Ian Poulter, never really been much of a Masters player, but you can find him at darn good odds. And even better is Siwoo Kim. And we've seen Siwoo Kim have some great starts this season, finished 3rd at Pebble Beach, 4th at the Genesis in LA. And I actually jumped on him as well at that point for the Masters. And I also got a futures ticket for the U.S. Open because it will be held at Pebble. Now, I understand Pebble will be a much different course than it was for the AT&T, but I got him at 150 to 1 for that, and I was able to get him at 175 to 1 for the Masters.
Yeah, absolutely. And also one of the things that Patrick pointed out in that segment was that, you know, he doesn't have a lot of exposure. I don't have a lot of bets yet. Even though these lines, I think the temptation is to bet them right away. But even though these lines have been out for probably a few months and since probably December or January at a lot of places, you know, he doesn't have a ton of exposure because, I mean, I think you want to wait for different variables. I mean, you're going to look at the obvious, the recent form and how they're playing coming into the tournament. And also, I think you're going to want to look at weather and, you know, and the market's going to adjust. And what he mentioned with Jordan Spieth, I mean, he's hit 20 to 1. Are we going to see 25s somewhere, 30s that are readily available? You may see some at a couple faraway places, but it might not be permeating throughout the market. But if you can get him as high as the 25s or the 30s, as poorly as he's played, you know, a horse for course and that course knowledge and that, you know, getting back somewhere where you've had some success, at that number, you ought almost have to take a shot at him. But, I mean, so many people have already bet him because of previous success. I don't know if, as poorly as he's played, if that number is really going to get there.
You don't think it's going to get to 25 or 30?
I don't know, because I think
what would be your buy point? When do you think you'll jump in on Spieth, and what would the number be, your threshold?
I would consider it at 25. I would definitely probably jump if we get into the 30s. I mean, I almost think you have to at that point. And then, I mean, there's also a lot of guys that have had previous success there that you're probably going to get a decent price on because they really haven't contended in a lot of tournaments this year, like a Bubba Watson, you know, who I would certainly jump on if I got in the high 30s or the 40s or somewhere in that range. And then previous winners like Danny Willett, who I kind of like a little bit this week as a real long shot at the Valspar. You know, if the weather, like Pat was saying, referring back to that segment, if the weather's bad and you're seeing 7, 8 under as the leader at the Masters on Sunday, you know, Danny Willett's more than likely to be in contention than if it's 15 or 16.
Zach Johnson, I believe it was 1997, you know, freezing cold at Augusta, and he won it with that little wedge, you know. I don't think he hit a par 5 and 2 all week, and got it done with the short stick and that wedge game that he's been famous for throughout his career. Rory McIlroy, off of the win at the Players' Championship, is now the favorite, a consensus favorite pretty much at every book I've seen, anywhere from 7 to 8 to 1. DJ still at 10 to 1 off of a nice finish at the Players. Wes, what is it with Rory McIlroy? He busted through and got a big victory at the Players' Championship. The guy has won on all stages of the world, but something at Augusta gets to him. We saw it in 2011 when he crumbled down the stretch in the final round. Do you think this year he can get over that hurdle? He's been playing so well this season already.
Based on how he's playing, the answer, I think, is a resounding yes. And I mean, eventually, and I think Rory is one of those players in terms of the top players. Some guys have it more than others. Rory, I think, really has an appreciation and an affinity for the history of the game, kind of like Tiger does. And really, I think, is very reflective on that. And I think clearly, has the desire and the fire within him to really cement his place in the history of the game. And you know, he's still very young. I mean, he's still going to have a lot of opportunities. And I've always said about Rory, nobody plays a more aesthetically pleasing or prettier game of golf than Rory McIlroy. I think when you combine the fact that, you know, not only the length, but the his great second approach shots, he can putt. He's great around the green, just has a really deft touch. And I think, you know, he really is more of kind of the throwback in terms of he's not just all power. He's more of the artist of the game. And we kind of saw it with Spieth, and we've seen it, I guess, with DeChambeau and some other guys, this kind of new analytical, scientific type player that has had success in various spots. But you know, Rory, to me, is the most fun to watch because he's the pure artist.
Now, that drive he hit on 18 at Sawgrass was just absolutely incredible. And that was pure Rory McIlroy right there. And, you know, you mentioned it, that his wedge play has gotten much better. He's actually been putting a lot better as well. His driving has always been great, his entire career. But if he's able to really dial in those irons on approach and get the flat stick going, then absolutely he can win anywhere in the world, including Augusta National. I also thought it was interesting that we saw the odds on Rickie Fowler at the Westgate go up from 16 to 1, now at 18 to 1. I believe you said last week you have not jumped on Fowler yet, but that you probably would give this guy another shot. Finished second last year, and he keeps knocking on the door at majors. Is 18 to 1 a number where you jump in now?
You know, maybe I would like to wait for about 20 or a little bit higher. I think it went up last week because Rickie, I think, had an illness last week and really wasn't feeling up to snuff. But, you know, he was kind of up and down. At some point hit some really good shots and some really poor ones, so he was very much a mixed bag. But, you know, this is the guy that I think a lot of us, myself and our usual third host here, Matt Humans, who's out this week with load management, he is very high on Rickie Fowler, and we have bet him a lot, and he just hasn't broken through. But we know he's got the talent, and we know he's got the ability to do so. So, you know, if I get him anywhere at 20, 22, 25, I probably will take a leap with him.
Let's look at our Tiger tracker. Tiger is skipping the Valspar this week, where he finished second last year. That's really where his comeback kind of began, where he was absolutely a factor and people were taking notice when he finished second to Paul Casey at the Valspar last year. He will skip it this year because of its spot in the schedule, really, but he has committed to the WGC match play. That'll take place at Austin Country Club next week in Austin, Texas. Always a tremendous event from a betting standpoint. Very difficult, Wes, because you don't have a lot of time to handicap these players. It's an unfamiliar situation. It's not a 4-day tournament, but boy, it's constant action.
Yeah, and I mean, and the fact that the way that they do it, they put them in different pods, and the top 16 players, I mean, it's seeded kind of like a little bit of a March Madness where you have the top 16, and then they take a B player, which is 17 to 32, and then 33 to 48, and 49 to 64. And they have pool play, so everybody that plays in this thing is going to get 3 matches. And then the winner of the group advances into the bracket format, and then it's more of a knockout format like the NCAA tournament. But then when you get to the Final Four, you have to play 36 holes on Sunday because you have the 2 semifinals. Then you have the losers of those semifinal matches play a kind of a consolation third-place match, which is still very valuable for world ranking points, and then the championship match. So you're talking potentially playing 7 matches in 5 days, and so I am a little.
That could wear on Tiger.
I am a little
bit,
surprised that he decided, hey, I'm going to go ahead and play in Austin this year.
And he used to own that event. I mean, a match play specialist for sure. It's absolutely, I think, one of the most fun tournaments to watch all year when you've got bets going because it's constant action, mano-a-mano, one player against another. But again, it's also, I think, one of the more difficult tournaments to bet. So you have to be careful with that one and maybe dumb down your betting amount a little bit because it's a very volatile and tough handicap is the match play. Speaking of match play, we'll be back. We'll give our head-to-head matchups and our futures for the week for the Valspar Championship. Matt Humans has chimed in, and we'll have his plays as well. It's Wes Reynolds and Brady Kannon here on VSiN. It's Longshots.
Catch VSiN last week. Here's some of what you missed.
So I like my chances. If anybody listening, they should definitely get in this contest. I mean, it's a great deal. You get great information. VSiN, the strongest thing about VSiN, I always preach to people, is the information you get. 70% of my handicapping is numbers, 20% is information. So, I mean, if you want the best information, I mean, you guys got four shows every day. You get great information from that. And that's the main reason, of course, in getting to know you guys, I'm a big fan of VSiN.
Again, this is going to be wishful thinking on my part. I want absolute total Armageddon in the final season. So I would say I would bet the yes plus 750.
Are you going in fresh here with all these?
With all these props?
You didn't look at these?
I purposely did not look, yeah.
Who kills the Ice Dragon? Jon Snow plus 130. Drogon plus 250. Rhaegal plus 250. Both dragons 2-1. Jaime 5-1.
Well, how is a human being going to kill?
Would have to be Snow could get I don't know, Ice Spear again. I don't know how do you kill the Ice Dragon? That's a good question.
Yeah.
This isn't fair.
Like, the reaction to every trade is, oh my God, I can't believe that Team X couldn't get more for this player. So clearly, we are overvaluing what veteran players are worth to NFL teams. Now listen, I mean, maybe we in the public are right? Maybe NFL teams are overvaluing draft picks and undervaluing veteran players. But we have to stop responding to trades. We have to stop responding to every trade with, oh my God, I can't believe that team didn't get more for that player.
I still think
when you look at this division, the Cleveland Browns, again, we talked about this, you can win the offseason as much. We have seen many teams win the offseason in terms of acquisitions. It's all putting it together. You're still relying on a first-time head coach. You're still relying on a second-year quarterback, right? I mean, there's still so many other factors that go into this other than, oh, my God, look at all this talent that they've acquired, and you still need to see this. So they're going to be the preseason darling, just like, and look at like the injuries to Jimmy Garoppolo totally sidelined the San Francisco 49ers, but look at the 49ers into last year, right? Everybody was hammering the win total over to go to the playoffs.
Not everybody.
No, but you know what I mean, right? The general public thought that the 49ers were a lock, competing for the Super Bowl, going to win that division, possibly go to the playoffs. Let's go.
Welcome back to Longshots, VSiN's weekly golf betting show. Now, back to your betting caddies, Brady Kannon, Matt Humans, and Wes Reynolds.
Welcome back to Long Shots. I'm Brady Kannon along with Wes Reynolds on Long Shots on VSiN.com, the VSiN app, Fubo TV. It's brought to you by Westgate Resort and Casino. And this segment is Match Play, where we give out our plays, brought to you by Tee Times USA. It's not just a .com. Behind our technology stands a caring staff of golf vacation experts who are just a phone call away throughout your quoting, booking, and entire travel experience. Because Tee Times USA is one of the country's most trusted leaders in golf vacations, we have access to the best deals and those hard-to-get tee times, even on some private clubs. Tee Times USA offers custom golf vacations and packages wherever you want to play, whether it be Florida, Las Vegas, Arizona, Hilton Head, Palm Springs, Myrtle Beach, Sea Island, Kiowa, Scottsdale, Pebble Beach, and many other locations. 28 years of experience as the golf travel industry leader. Save time and money. No transaction or service fees. All we do is help with local, unbiased expertise. Easy, convenient, and hassle-free golf vacation planning from your initial phone call to your final putt on the 18th hole. Be sure to mention VSiN to receive special amenities as a part of your trip. Visit teatimesusa.com or call 800-374-8633 for more details. Your next dream golf vacation is right at your fingertips. And Wes, we want to get into the match play here and give everybody our plays for the week. Matt Humans, I mentioned he has sent in his plays as far as his futures. I know he is on Ryan Moore at 50-1. I know he has Jason Day at 10-1, and we'll get the graphic up here with the rest of his plays. I know he's got a head-to-head matchup, and there they are for you there. Matt also on Kevin Kisner at 40-1, and Paul Casey, the defending champion, at 20-1. His matchup, again going with Casey, plus 105 over his favorite player, Sergio Garcia.
No surprise that Matt is going against Sergio Garcia, but he's not bitter about that Masters thing. He's only mentioned it every time I've talked to him the last 2 years. But you know, we agree on Kevin Kisner, and I mentioned him earlier, and you can still get him anywhere around the 40 to 50-1 range. I've seen him market wide. We'll talk about Brandt Snedeker. I mentioned him earlier, back with the old swing coach. I think he's kind of I've seen some buy signs from him. I like the way he played the week before the Players, and I like how he played at the Players. Sung Jae Im, I mentioned, kind of just outside those lines, trying to get into the match play and the Masters. Kind of a couple hunch plays. I went with Brandon Grace, and I know you like another South African, Louis Oosthuizen, and South Africans actually have good history here. Charles Schwartzel has been a winner here at the past, Retief Goosen.
Yep.
So a lot of these guys, you know, have very good history here. So took a shot with him. Couple longer shots, JT Poston and Brian Harmon at 80 to 100-1 respectively, and Danny Willett, who I mentioned earlier, at 150-1. I think he's a guy that's a pretty good bet on difficult golf courses.
He started out the year really playing well. He's fallen off just a little bit, but I'm hoping he peaks in time for Augusta because I have a ticket on him for Augusta as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think you know, he's found a little bit of I think of confidence in his game. I mean, don't forget he did win the Dubai Championship at the end of the season on the European Tour. So he's not as like out in the middle of nowhere as he was kind of after that Ryder Cup at Hazeltine. I kind of felt it did a little number on him with his brother kind of yapping in the media, and he took a lot of flack for that. And I think it wore on him emotionally and psychologically. But
this is really the first time we've seen him, you know, come around and be relevant since after the Masters win. He really fell off after that.
Yeah, right. And his world ranking just really plummeted. But, I think he's slowly starting to make his way back. And he wasn't really an unproven commodity, even before the Masters. I mean, he was a guy that was winning regularly on the European Tour. So he's a good player, and he's still got the game to produce.
I took a shot on a couple of shorter shots. Sergio Garcia, 8th in strokes gained tee to green, 1st in strokes gained approach. This guy's always been a ball striker and doing it again on tour this year. He's been playing very well, fell off a little bit at the Players last week, finished 4th here last year. I think the good play continues for Sergio. Also, 43rd on tour in putting from inside of 10 feet. And putting is typically not Sergio's strength, but if he's able to putt, watch out, because the rest of this guy's game is very strong. Webb Simpson, 10th on tour in scrambling, 17th in strokes gained approach. You mentioned Louis Oosthuizen, 30-1, a good scrambler. Not the greatest stats on tour this year, but it was back starting in November when he had 4 straight top 10s on the European Tour. So this game, his game is definitely in good shape. He's healthy, and that's very important with Oosthuizen, who is often injured. I had to take another shot at Lucas Glover. The guy's numbers are too good.
I did as well.
Yeah, I think he'll rebound off of that poor performance last week at the Players Championship. And then Ryan Moore, the local UNLV running rebel. I'm in agreement there with Matt Humans. His stats look great. A very good, short, difficult course player where accuracy off the tee matters. He's a good putter. The only weakness really in his game as far as the stats is probably scrambling, but he hits a lot of greens in regulation and doesn't have to scramble a whole lot. And then my head-to-head matchup, I've got Sergio Garcia over Gary Woodland. I think Woodland, he looked at him last week and he finished 30 in the Players, which I felt was a little bit out of character for his game. But I think that course, like we talked about, set up better for the Bombers than it ever has in the past. And even though Woodland's won here, I think this is a much better course for Sergio than it is Gary Woodland. So that's going to do it for Long Shots. He's Wes Reynolds. I'm Brady Kannon. We'll be back next week to preview the WGC Match Play. Keep it here on VSiN, VSiN.com, Fubo TV, and the VSiN app. It's Long Shots, brought to you by the Westgate Resort and Casino.
Subscribe to Point Spread Weekly now and test your handicapping abilities against other subscribers in the 3rd annual VSiN Beat the Spread Challenge. A lot of cash on the line. Point Spread Weekly is VSiN's digital magazine dedicated to making you a better handicapper. Not just this week, not just next week, but for years to come. And what better way to put your skills to the test than to pick all the Division I men's basketball tournament games against the opening point spread. Beat out your fellow subscribers and win $10,000, $10 grand, 2 nights at the South Point, and a guest spot with Brent Musburger and his guys in the desert. Only an annual subscription to Point Spread Weekly will automatically qualify you for this free entry to the Beat the Spread Challenge. $10,000 on the line. One more time. $10,000. It'll change your life. A 1-year subscription, only $240, and you get an issue a week. 52 issues of Point Spread Weekly, our special March Madness guide, and 24/7 access to our live video stream and all the replays of all of our shows. More information, sign up now, VSiN.com/subscribe.
If you didn't catch VSiN last week, here's some of what you missed.
So here's what I've suggested. Why don't they do this? There's 36 at-large teams. 36. The Dick Vitale plan is very simple. Give the big guys 28 of them. You got 28 of those at-large berths. The other 8 are going to go for the teams like Belmont, Lipscomb, North Carolina, out there, Greensboro, teams that won 25 games, got upset in their tournaments, because people love to see the Davids and the Goliaths. Last night was a prime example. I mean, I don't want to hear about these quad 1s, quad 2s, all this nonsense, because it favors every system that's put in, favors the big guys.
He lost almost $500,000 last night. He went 0-2 with the first period unders. He had $260,000 on the Oilers. They got run out at home by the Devils on a back-to-back and somehow allowed 6 goals. Apparently the Devils are back. And then he had $192,000 on the Maple Leafs. So he lost $492,000 in one night. With what happened last night in the first periods, he is now down 413,000 betting against us on the first periods. Everything he does loses.
It's really not that much that off, but to your point also, Gil, as these pairings are coming out, what professionals like yourself will do, will start formulating their numbers, and that's how they're going to formulate their plays, right? I mean, now if a bettor out there, professional, puts a number, makes their number 4 points different than ours, then that's an automatic play for them typically. So, but that's fine. The numbers aren't up there for show purposes.
Everywhere he's went, this kid is absolutely, I mean, 317, 355, 337, 368, 340. Like, this kid can mash, dude. It's tough to hit home runs, but it's easier to hit home runs in the big leagues than in the minor leagues. That's a fact, because these guys are around the zone a lot more. And guys like him, I'm not pitching around him at all until he proves to me, like Bellinger did his rookie year, that he can hit. And then I start to go, okay, maybe I'll do something different. I don't know much about the kid, but based on these numbers, I mean, 20 is not a lot, but it is a lot for a rookie. I think you flip a coin on this one.